Welcome to A Year in the Bible with Daily Grace. My name is Kristen.
And my name is Katie. And we want to spend a few minutes a day with you walking through the New Testament, one chapter at a time. This year, we will fix our gaze upon Christ so that we may know him, not only with our minds, but with our hearts.
Together, we will learn that who Jesus is changes everything. Welcome back to A Year in the Bible with Daily Grace. My name is Kristen Schmucker, and we are journeying through the New Testament, and we're currently in the book of Philippians. I am so happy to be spending this time in Philippians. The past few days have been such an encouragement, and I love today's chapter. In chapter 3, Paul focuses on the importance of knowing Jesus, and that theme runs throughout the entire chapter. Paul begins again with the command to rejoice that we have seen throughout the letter to the Philippian church. As he tells the church to rejoice, he also warns them about those who distort the gospel. And Paul uses pretty strong language to describe them. Twisting the gospel is serious, and Paul makes that clear. Paul also speaks of the circumcision, and he uses that phrase here to refer to the true people of God. This is a reference to the Old Testament practice of circumcision, as well as a reference to what Paul described in Romans 2 as a circumcision of the heart. Paul says that these are the people who worship God, boast in Christ, and do not trust in themselves. He is showing that being a Christian is about our hearts before the Lord. This reference is extra interesting because the book of Philippians is spoken to a primarily Gentile audience, many of whom were being pressured to take on Jewish identity markers such as circumcision. Paul wants us to see that salvation is not just for the Jewish people, but for people from all nations. He goes on to describe his own pedigree. Paul is basically saying that if it was all about good works and national heritage, he wins. He came from the right kind of Jewish family. He was a Pharisee who did all the right things and had the right background, and yet he was far from Christ. In doing the things that he thought would make him righteous before God, he actually was persecuting the Son of God himself. Everything that Paul had once valued, he now counts as loss in comparison with knowing Jesus. Paul communicates to us that the Christian life is all about Jesus and knowing him. It isn't about trying harder and being better. It is about being in Christ. The doctrine of union with Christ reminds us that we are in Christ and he is in us. This union is both the source and the goal of the Christian life. It is the source and what we live from each day, and it is the goal in that it is what we live for each day. The greatest goal that we could ever have is Jesus himself. All of our life should be lived in pursuit of knowing him and resting in the truth that we are known by him and found in him. May we know him. May we know the incomprehensible power of the resurrection, and may we share in his sufferings. And though we do not know what the journey of life may hold, we can be certain that Jesus walks with us through it all. Paul knew that he had not arrived, but he is still pressed on with a desire to take hold of righteousness because Christ had taken hold of his heart. We can be reminded that we do not live to earn God's favor. Because we are in Christ, we have already received it. As we close this chapter, we must remember that this world is not our home. We are citizens of heaven. This reminder must have been particularly striking to the Philippian church. They knew what it meant to be citizens of a land far away, because they lived in modern-day Greece but were citizens of Rome. In the same way, we are citizens of heaven and not of this world. Today we behold Jesus as the source and the goal of the Christian life. We see him as the one who is worth more than anything that this world has to offer. We behold him who is the only one who can satisfy the thirst in our souls. We behold him as our greatest goal and the one whom we rest in. We behold Jesus. May our greatest goal be to know him.
Thank you so much for listening to today's episode of A Year in the Bible with Daily Grace. Don't forget to check out the show notes for helpful links and resources related to today's episode. And make sure you are following at Daily Grace Podcast on Instagram for more A Year in the Bible content, and at the Daily Grace Co. for all things Bible study resources. We can't wait to study again with you tomorrow. Bye, friends.